Hello, good evening or good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're from. And welcome to the Peaceful Surrender. I'm your host, Vanessa Weathers. And in case you're new here, I'm the creator of Espirito Libre, which is a service that I designed to help people heal from trauma and stress using trauma-informed spiritual care. So, really, I'm just on a mission to inspire people to become more aware of their spiritual health and how to maintain and improve it, as well as the role that it plays in our overall well being and how it impacts our physical and mental health. I do believe that over time, as humans, we've gotten very far away from our understanding of how we fit into the larger picture, the larger universe, and how we connect to everything around us on this planet and beyond, but especially to each other. And so I feel called to, at this moment, help people understand and kind of work through what many of us are feeling, especially with the pandemic and that giving us a lot of time to sit and ponder life's questions, just to help navigate, help others navigate those times in your life where you're kind of questioning, what's my purpose and what's my role here and stuff. And so I'm here to help guide folks through that as well. So this hour is dedicated to us surrendering all of our worries, our concerns, the things that have been weighing us down, the things that are not benefiting us, that are not serving our higher purpose. This time is really dedicated to just surrendering the weight and burden that those things place on our lives, and really just setting aside and carving out time to be soft and vulnerable and to just kind of let yourself exist and be. And so that's my goal through this weekly live stream series, is to just help facilitate that. And the reason why I selected this day of the week and this particular time of the day really was just based on my experience when I was, working in the corporate world. I would experience something that me and some of my friends would refer to as Sunday night depression, where you just kind of are overwhelmed with feelings around having to return back to the grindstone the following day, having just literally left it not that long ago, because we are living in a world that places too much of an emphasis on work and productivity, and we certainly don't get enough downtime to attend to our needs. And so the weekends flew by so quickly when you're trying to get everything done, but also relax at the same time, because we are deserving of rest. So yeah, on Sundays I used to experience this terrible anxiety and just start to question, the necessity of even having a job and stuff. And it was quite an unpleasant experience. And, there were times where I would be better able at, working, talking myself through those feelings. And then other times where it seemed a lot harder to be able to do so, all dependent on what else was going on in my life and in the workplace as well. So this led me to choose this day and time in hopes of helping others who may experience those feelings, but also recognizing that we all aren't on the same work cycle. So I hope that you find comfort in this, regardless of wherever you are in your cycle of work or production. And I appreciate you for joining, whether you're joining me live or you're visiting me across time by watching the recording of this episode. So today I wanted to focus on an aspect of anxiety. So, like, to me, anxiety is this, sort of humongous topic, really lots of facets, nooks and crannies to it. But I've been doing a lot of reflection around the role that anxiety has played in my life in terms of um, a lot of decisions that I made based out of fear or a sense of losing control. Because for those of us that live with anxiety, a huge part of it is being able to control um, your environment and hopes of avoiding, like panic attacks or anxiety attacks. And so a lot of anxiety, a lot of people experience anxiety, spend a lot of time focusing on preparation and preparedness and, um, you know, thinking out multiple courses that may happen, and it really takes a lot of energy to do those complex thought processes and stuff. um, and so, yeah, I wanted to just kind of explore this topic with this audience a bit further, share more about my personal experiences with anxiety, and then also how can we look to our ancestors for guidance around how we may be able to leverage ancestral spiritual practices to help us with the symptoms of anxiety that we experience today, or even hopefully the root causes, but also recognizing that sometimes the root causes of our anxiety are out of our control because they're part of a larger systemic sort of issue. So in that case, what can we do? What is still remaining within our power to help us navigate and get through those trying and challenging times? And so, how can we look to the ancestors for guidance around this as well? But before we dive in, I do want to just spend a couple moments sort of just grounding us in. That way we have, a little bit of time to just kind of transition from whatever you may have been doing before watching this, and to kind of signal to our mind and body that, hey, we're going to set aside this time to focus on our higher awareness, our spiritual health. And so there's a song I'd like to play as I'm guiding us through this. It's a couple minutes long, but I find it to be very soothing and relaxing. And so I'll just kind of guide us through um, some breathing exercises as we listen to this track. So I invite you to get into a comfortable position and join me in the next few minutes of this relaxation exercise. Okay, so just start out breathing normal. Focus on just bringing awareness to the pattern of your breath. Continue to inhale and exhale as feels comfortable for you. For every breath you take, I want you to feel your muscles loosening and becoming more and more relaxed. And as you inhale, I want you to feel the oxygen permeate every cell of your being, bringing in rich oxygen meant to heal our body and spirit at all levels. And as you exhale, want you to feel any unwanted or negative energy exiting your body and just gently floating away from you. Continue to breathe normally. Inhale and exhale. Feel your muscles continue to relax and melt away. And you can gently start to bring yourself back to awareness. You can wiggle your fingers and your toes. Maybe shrug the shoulders if it feels good. And then if you haven't already, just go ahead and open your eyes. So that was also a really good practical example of an ancestral spiritual practice known as meditation, mindfulness, that really allows us to take pause and become grounded. When anxiety decides to rear its head, it has a tendency of getting us wrapped up in a whirlwind of what if. And so one really effective way of countering that effect of anxiety is to just take some time to be still, to become an observer, to take on the role of an observer, and to really just slow things down. I think there's a lot of misconception around, meditation, and there are different types of meditation and mindfulness. And some people haven't tried it because they feel they may be unable to clear their mind or to not think of anything. And I want to encourage anybody that may feel similarly to still give it a try, because that is not the goal of meditation. The goal of meditation is not to clear your mind of thoughts, but to be able to slow the flow of thoughts down enough so you can observe them and not pass any judgment, but just bring them to your awareness. And it's often good to imagine these things as like clouds that are kind of floating by. And once you've done that, and oftentimes it can be just a few minutes long is all it takes. You've often put yourself in a state where you are better able to rationalize and use that higher level thinking that's needed in these sorts of situations, usually, to decide what your next course of action might be. And that also may include recognizing that, you know what, this feels urgent, but after taking some time to think about it, it's not really urgent. It's not a life or death situation. I don't need to make a decision in this moment in time, and I can put that on the shelf, revisit it at a later time. So, I'm a huge fan of mindfulness and meditation, and definitely expect a lot more of that in these sessions, because I think it's just a very, very good way of slowing things down for yourself so that you can just kind of step back and do an assessment from from a place of a point of view where you are more clear-minded, if you will. Okay. So, how do you release the control that anxiety has over your life? This is something that I have struggled with my entire life for as long as I can, remember. I've been an anxious person, and I have been able to make progress throughout my life as well. And then I still have some more progress to make because it is a journey. It's not like a destination. You're generally probably not cured of anxiety, but you can manage the symptoms of it and better understand your triggers and the way in which you respond to your triggers. So let's kind of explore this a little further. How do we release the control that anxiety has over our life? Well, where I usually like to start is just by stepping back and examining the role anxiety has in terms of evolution. Like, what would be the evolutionary advantage of us experiencing something like anxiety? What is the benefit of it? Why do we even need to experience that at all? And so I think by recognizing that anxiety is actually part of a healthy mental and physiological response, but it can get hijacked, right? So it is part of that whole parasympathetic nervous system process. You might hear it as like the fight or flight, or fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Sort of that the system and process that gets implemented when we feel threatened, afraid. So maybe if you've ever been driving a car and all of a sudden the car in front of you slams on their brakes and you have to slam on your brakes, that's the same system that's at play. And that then triggers a series of actions at the physiological or physical level and at the mental level as well. And so what usually happens to people who end up living with anxiety is at some point in their life, they experienced um, something traumatic, or usually several traumatic things that then just kind of hijacks that system, where it is triggered in instances where it's really not a true life or death situation, but to the body and the mind, it feels that way. And even though your rational side or your higher awareness may recognize sort of the preposterousness of the situation, and like, hey, this is actually not threatening, it can be very hard to still soothe yourself and not be triggered, and not let fear kind of control and rule your decision making in that moment. And so the goal is to really aim for, how do you get your mind and body to be more aligned to that higher awareness, the one that tells you, that voice that's like, it's okay, this isn't really a threat, but it's so quiet and drowned out by the voice that is like, oh my gosh, I can't, so many things could happen because of this, you never know, this and that, we should just avoid it, or plan, control. And so, the goal is, how do you make that that higher awareness voice that has your best interest at heart as well? How do you make it louder than your subconscious, your ego, that was formed when we are younger, that is also there to protect us, but doesn't like to kind of update itself with new information, is kind of stubborn. So how do you get all of these processes and aspects of self to work together in harmony, or even just become more aware and conscious of what's at play here? And, this is important because, I always say life is way too short to be doing lots of different things that just don't serve us. But it's certainly too short to let worry and fear rule our lives to the point where we're making all decisions based out of the fear of, well, what if? And, there was probably a time in our life where that served us, right? Where that felt good and it kept us safe and feeling comfy, right? But then there comes a point where you end up experiencing extreme anger and frustration and lashing out at minor conveniences because things aren't going according to how you need them to be in order to avoid triggers and experiencing anxiety. It becomes an issue when you are planning your whole life around it, whether it be you can't drive at certain times of the year because you have panic attacks when it's snowing or raining, um, or if just end up significantly altering your way of living, um, due to fear. And like I said, at first it feels good and it could serve us and be beneficial. But then oftentimes keeping um, ourselves guarded and continuing to make decisions out of fear doesn't serve us in the long run because we are not trusting in ourselves. We're not showing a trust in our decision making and our judgment when we're constantly making decisions based out of fear. So this is where I like to just kind of encourage us to look back at, like, well, anxiety is not something new. It wasn't just invented in the last 100 years. Humans have been experiencing it forever. And so how would these feelings and experiences be handled by our ancestors who, um, they weren't using modern mental health, practices. They probably wouldn't even have a diagnosis like anxiety. They probably have a diagnosis, but obviously refer to it as something different. So how can we learn from them in terms of what are some of the things that they did to encourage being grounded and centered and having those feelings? What are the same things that we can learn from them around managing and coping with symptoms of anxiety? And one of the things that tends to be true for many of the indigenous spiritual practices, especially pre-colonization, definitely within Africa, but I'm sure that existed on, other continents as well. I definitely know Asia, probably even within the European spiritual practices as well, is a strong emphasis on collectivism, strong communities, and what's called a healthy interdependence. So understanding that we our ability to thrive is somewhat dependent on people in our community and how able they are to survive and thrive as well. And so a lot of the indigenous spiritual practices were centered and based around that, the knowledge of how everything is connected, where you fit within that picture, and how to nurture those connections. And when you start to really adopt that mindset, um, it gives you something bigger to latch on to, so that you don't feel so isolated and alone, so that you know that you're not in this alone to figure this out. And so, really, what we could take away from the ancestors is to ensure that we are building a community for ourselves, which I know can be very challenging when all of your energy is being directed towards your coping mechanisms for anxiety that may no longer be serving you and benefiting you, but is definitely worth the um, redirecting the investment of energy towards building those types of connections. And you can always start with connecting with nature, right? If you're more introverted like I am, sometimes you don't always react with enthusiasm when people suggest like going out and maybe making friends or whatever. Not that I'm opposed to friends, so don't misinterpret my statement or anything. But you know, as introverts, we recognize the level of energy and the investment that is needed to create human to human connections and relationships. And so I think it's out of like honor and recognizing that this is a significant investment of time and energy and everything, that we tend to be a little bit more selective about when we're going to do that. Um, and so, you know, you can always find connection through nature, right? Any time of year as well, even in the dead of cold winter, if you live in a place that experiences winter. It is one of the easiest ways to feel grounded and centered is just by kind of, you know, getting out there and coming into physical contact if you can with elements of nature and just stepping back and observing the space around you and the natural elements that exist, and you know, reflecting on the larger ecosystem that, you know, you and these things are a part of, um, is a really good way to start to tap into the, you know, the knowledge that there is something bigger than all of us that we are a part of, and that everything is connected. So spending time, you know, out in nature is a really good way of, if you need a starting point of, you know, tapping into something higher than yourself as well. Um, Another thing that we can gain from sitting back and observing nature is an awareness of cycles. So there are different types of cycles that exist in the natural world. You know, you have things like the seasons, there's the cycles of the different life forms, and, you know, all of that. But the takeaway is to know that things exist in a cycle, right? And so this is a good reminder for us to recognize our own personal cycles as it relates to anxiety, including being able to name what causes us anxiety, um, what triggers these feelings of anxiety. What are the feelings? What are the feelings mentally and physiologically? So being able to put words to those things. And so if you think of like the trigger as the start of the cycle, okay, so what's that start? And it's obviously probably going to be more than one particular thing, but try to focus on the things that probably induce the most amount of anxiety or that have you feeling anxious the most often. And then, all right, what's the series of events that comes after that? All right. So we start with the trigger event. Okay, I'm feeling anxious. Like for me, when I start to feel anxious, I know my heart starts to beat faster. I typically get this like feeling in my stomach, um, like butterflies, I guess, if you will. Um, and my brain just starts to go at a mile a minute, just going down all of these different possibilities. And oftentimes too, I'm dealing with feelings of like anger and frustration, and like, have they only listened to me or done it this way or whatever, you know. Um, and so then, on top of those physiological things that I'm experiencing, and then the psychological things, those thoughts. Um, and then I start to go down like, I can, right? If I don't interrupt that cycle, I'll start to go down like this path of like creating these narratives. And for me, it's about, and usually with anxiety, it's about things that haven't necessarily happened yet. Or maybe they happen once, a few times or whatever. It's not currently happening, but you have anxiety about the potential for it to happen again. So then I'll start to create all these future narratives that are just based really on my feelings in the moment, which are typically not um, feelings that I would hold on to long term, like anger and resentment and frustration and stuff like that. Um, and then that just kind of goes into a spiral around ruminating around those things. And then it starts to alter how I see people that may be involved in this and how I see myself. And then I start to feel a sense of urgency around, I have to do something or make a decision. And so that's kind of a example of the sort of reflection that you can do to identify your own personal cycles of anxiety. And there are many ways in which you can capture this. Obviously, one clear way is to journal, right? You can, keep track throughout the day if you're able to. When you start to recognize and feel yourself becoming anxious, you can kind of capture um, whether it be in the moment or after, or at the end of the day, kind of looking back on the day and being like, okay, what was I doing at that time? And okay, was I feeling anxious about what I was doing at the time? Or maybe I was like thinking about something at the time that then, triggered these feelings of anxiety. Okay, so then what did I do, right? Maybe even capturing like, what did I experience, any physical sensations? What were the emotions that I experienced? Things like that. And if you just keep track of this, and it doesn't need to be a long-term tracking project, but even like a week or two can be very insightful. in terms of revealing, patterns, and can then equip you to make decisions around how is this something that I can control, this trigger? Is it within my complete control? And also recognizing and accepting the fact that we cannot control other people. We may attempt to. Some people abuse and misuse power in an attempt to control people. That often doesn't have good results. So as you're thinking about these triggers and you're asking yourself, is this something in my control? If the trigger is a person, you more than likely that will not be in your control. The things that are in your control are you and everything about you, including whether or not you choose to spend time around that person or limit your time, things of that nature. But an outcome of this exercise is not to necessarily go back and tell other people how to live their lives, but really to ask yourself, what is within my sphere of control that I can do? And then, unfortunately, there are going to be times where the trigger is out of the realm of your control. I know a lot of people are in situations where they're in workplaces that are not very welcoming and accepting, and pretty much they're toxic. And as much as they would love to leave that environment, they can't due to whatever reasons, that exists for them. And so in those instances, it'll become more a matter of how can I equip myself with techniques and tools that'll help provide me an additional layer of protection and strength to get through those instances until I'm in a space where I can feel safe, right? Till I can feel safe and secure. And that's going back to the tracking exercise. That's a good way of reflecting on what you've already done, like what you've already tried and the outcomes of that. Because if you are doing something and it worked, maybe that's your go-to, you want to make it. But if you've been trying all these different things and they're not working, then that tells you there's more work to be done, obviously, around finding something that speaks to you, that really works, for you. Like I said, I'm a fan of the mindfulness. You can even do mindful movement. So maybe you're not a person who wants to be still or can stand to be still for any length of time. Mindful movement would be wonderful for you. And so like an example of mindful movement would be if you're like out on a walk, but you're bringing your full awareness and attention to the here and now, whether that be focusing on the movements of your body, the way your clothes feel against your skin, things that, the sensory elements around you. So what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you, feeling physically? What are you feeling emotionally? What are you smelling? Things like that. Just being present in the moment, right? Not letting your mind wander, is really good for mindful movement. But you can also do it in, just everyday activities. Like if you're, washing the dishes, bringing your full attention to the activity. Again, bringing your mind to the sensory elements of like how the water's feeling, the dish, the way the dishcloth feels, and, things of that nature, is a wonderful alternative if you're not one to sit still to be mindful as well. There's a plethora of other things, but the main thing I want to encourage folks to do is to just become more present and aware and attuned to your cycles of anxiety. If you're like me and don't really stick to journaling for too long, another thing that I have done is like a video journal, or if you have the ability to like record on your mobile device or something, whether that be just like an audio file, even that that's wonderful as well too, because then you could go back over and look at the end of whatever you set for the tracking period and just kind of see like what those trends are. And you can keep it very simple, you could, if you wanted to implement like a scale rating of somehow, like maybe how much anxiety you felt during the day. If you wanted to use one of those like emotions or feelings charts and, pick out the top 3 emotions you felt for that day, and then just kind of talk about that. Again, whether you're recording or you're writing this down, it's really just about taking a step back and reflecting from the role of observer, and then just kind of looking back at like what and seeing what patterns may reveal themselves. So for the last bit of time that we have together, I wanted to guide us through another meditation that I've put together just for this evening, to help with, again, surrendering the hold that anxiety can have over your life, while also recognizing there is a role that anxiety does play in our ability to survive. So not completely demonizing it, because another goal within spiritual health and spiritual care is to accept all parts of yourself. So we're not going to demonize anxiety necessarily. We're going to express gratitude for the role it has played in terms of getting us to where we are in our life today. And we're also going to let anxiety know that it's time for it to release some of the holds and control that it wields within our system, because we are trusting in our higher self and our higher consciousness and our higher awareness. We have come to the realization that we can do that. And we know that that side of us has our best interest in heart as well too. And so this meditation, that's sort of what inspired this meditation that I'll do now. All right, so let me go ahead and find some gentle music. As I'm doing that, please feel free to get into a relaxing position, whether that be sitting, reclining, or laying down, just as long as your breathing is not restricted in any manner. Go ahead and next channel, right channel. Okay. So once you're in a comfortable position, we'll just start by bringing attention to our normal breath. Just focusing on the pattern of our inhale and exhale. Focusing on the way that our chest rises and falls. Focusing on anywhere where we may be holding on to tension in our body. Bringing that area into our mind visually. And visualizing the tension and tightness, leaving that area as we exhale. Now I want you to imagine that you are laying on your back gently, and that there are large vines that are wrapped around your body. At first, these vines helped you to feel safe and secure. Just as when we're babies, we feel safe and secure when we're swaddled and wrapped tightly. But over time, these vines have become a little too tight, and you are ready to loosen them because you recognize that you are in control and that you can call on them for support at any time you need them. You don't need them to be wrapped so tightly and in full control any longer. So as you inhale and exhale, I want you to focus on your inhale. I want you to feel your entire body expand. And then as you exhale, you feel these vines becoming looser, and you feel yourself able to move a bit more. Continue to breathe in and out. And again, on the inhale, your entire body expands with the oxygen, which stretches these vines. And as you exhale, your body contracts, but you can feel more space between you and the vines. Continue. Another inhale. Body is expanding. And then as you exhale, your body contracts. And you feel safe and secure knowing that the vines are still there if you need them for support. But you also recognize the power you have in your higher awareness to make decisions that are in your best interest and not solely out of fear or the need to control. Your higher awareness is here to help you. Cultivate the voice it has within you. Focus on the guidance it has to offer. Trust in your higher self and its ability to care for you. Inhale, exhale. gently start to make your way back to consciousness, but take your time in doing so. First, anchor your mind to something in the present moment, whether that be my voice or the music or another sound in your environment. And then begin to wake up your physical body. Start slowly, slow movements that feel good to you. Could be twirling your ankle, moving your foot in a circular motion, shrugging the shoulders, stretching out the neck. And if you haven't already, go ahead and open your eyes. Just give yourself the time and space to reacclimate. And I hope you found that to be enjoyable and helpful. Again, I appreciate your presence with me during this last hour. And I hope that you were able to experience the weightlessness that comes with being able to surrender the things that weigh you down. And if there's a topic you'd like to hear me discuss in a future episode, please go ahead and visit my website at aspirolibre.org. And there's a form on the peaceful surrender page that you can fill out. You can keep it anonymous too. To recommend any topics, ask questions, to seek any advice and counsel that you think I might be able to assist you with. I hope that, again, wherever you are in whatever cycle, that this message finds you well and that you are able to take away something that you can hold in your heart to help you on your healing journey. I look forward to speaking with you all again very soon and hope that you take care. Until next time.